Good evening and welcome into Tennessee Volunteers Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I am Tucker Harlan alongside Jordan Binkley. Happy to have you guys along with us tonight. We apologize. We are coming to you from a little bit of a later time than usual. We had to forge through some technical difficulties, but that is the reality of doing this thing that we enjoy. But again, we appreciate all of you guys being here with us tonight. If you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe to Tennessee at the Voice of College Football. Really helps us out, really helps you get to more content that you guys enjoy. And we're happy to have you guys on. And other thing, too, we've not pumped this up a whole lot, but the network has launched a website as well. The Voice of College Football, vocfb.com is the name of it. You can look at different articles. You can chat in different chat rooms, forums, debate amongst yourselves about different things going on in the world of college football. Yeah, it's a really nice place to be. Hopefully you guys will check that out. Yeah, happy to have you guys along with us tonight. Also want to shout out those of you who live in Knoxville, Chattanooga, North Georgia, and Western North Carolina. Now, why am I shouting you guys out? Well, you're now earthquake survivors, which includes myself, which I never thought I'd experience one of those before I saw a tornado, but here I am, a survivor of an earthquake that woke me up, by the way, at 9 a.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, hearing about the earthquakes and everything's quite crazy because I never really thought of Tennessee as a place that could have earthquakes. But I remember my dad was telling me as a kid that there was like an earthquake way back in the day
Yep,
that was so strong that it turned the tide of like the river. Like the river started flowing. I don't remember which one, but sort of
Mississippi River. So
Mississippi.
so people talk about the San Andreas fault in the West Coast all the time. What is not as commonly known, but will be significantly more devastating when it happens, is the New Madrid fault line, which that sits between Missouri, Tennessee, Arkansas, right there in the Mississippi River. For those of you in West Tennessee, you'll know that's why Reelfoot Lake is a thing out there because of that earthquake that sent the river upward. You could feel it as far north as Detroit. But this one that we had here, obviously it was not to that effect, but it was enough to where you could feel it, which is not something I would have ever thought was a possibility. But again, shout out to those of you guys who are now earthquake survivors who did not think you would be earthquake survivors on Saturday morning.
Yeah, so now y'all have something new for your two truths and a lie.
Yeah, I've survived an earthquake. Now, apparently, they happen not too frequently here, but every now and again. Like, I want to say there are some people here that have felt like two or three of them in their lifetime. I've lived in Knoxville 5 years, have been here on and off throughout my lifetime. I never thought I would feel one, but here we are.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see something new every day. You feel something new every day in this case.
Literally. And now you're a survivor, you live to tell the story, and now you got something to tell your future kids about. And when they're complaining about something, be like, "Well, my dad said he survived an earthquake."
Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go.
Floods and earthquakes are the two natural disasters that I have survived so far. But that's enough of the other news in the world. We do have some news in the world of Tennessee football this week. Kind of a light news week, and that's going to be a little bit of a theme here, probably for the foreseeable future, at least until August rolls around. Um, there is some recruiting potentially on the horizon. In fact, I know it will be in the next month or two. There is a running back, Janaz Walton from Carrollton, Georgia, I believe, who is set to commit on Wednesday, although I think Notre Dame is the heavy favorite there. So we'll see if he commits, but he did list Tennessee in his, I think, top 5 or 6. So we'll see what he decides on. But as far as news that pertains to, I guess this is the past now, but I guess the here and now, you could say as well. First bit of news we had last week, Brew McCoy medically retires from football. Apparently, he had told NFL teams not to draft him in the process because he knew that this was something that was going to happen, which makes a lot of sense as to why he went undrafted now that we hear about it. And look, I hate to hear this, but he's doing what's best for him. Just with everything that's happened to him within the last couple of years, like, and he said it in his, I guess, farewell to football statement, you could call it. Uh, that injury he suffered against South Carolina could have very well been career ending. A lot of those lower body injuries have that potential, unfortunately. And watching him this year, obviously, you respect him for coming back and all the contributions he made afterward, but it just never felt like he was the same after he had that ankle injury against South Carolina.
No, no, and it's sad to see the situation that he's in, especially after all like the trials and tribulations he had to go through to like even get to the point to go in the NFL. It's sad to see, but I mean, ultimately you got to choose what's best for you and your future. I mean, if he's planning on like having a family and everything like that in the future, and like I'm sure he's going to want to go around and be able to play with his kids. He doesn't want to have to struggle walking and everything like that. And you don't want to live a life in pain. Like, yes, you can make millions of dollars, but you got to start thinking about quality of life and things of that nature, especially when in a violent league as such as the NFL. Um, so it's good that he made like the best decision for himself and for his health. But I mean, it's sad for fans to see for sure, especially with all his potential. I mean, we're talking about a former 5-star recruit here.
Yeah, yeah, he was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, starting at Texas, then went back home to California to play at USC. And he had to fight through a lot in those years too. There was some off-field thing that happened. I don't know what exactly it was. I don't know, maybe there was some kind of like assault charges or something. I'm not entirely sure what it was. Again, it's been several years, and obviously I've talked to Brew on at least one or two occasions. He doesn't seem like a guy that's got that kind of aggression in him whatsoever. And then of course he had to fight through the classic NCAA waiver eligibility crisis some of these guys have when they transfer. There was that one receiver at North Carolina, or I guess 2 years ago now, that couldn't play until 6 games into the season because the NCAA just took so long with his waiver. And there was like this whole debate back and forth between the NCAA and Mac Brown over it. So, yeah, even before the injury, had to overcome a lot of obstacles. But I just think to the guys that have come to Tennessee as transfers in the portal era, he is probably the second most memorable right now, I would say, among Tennessee fans. I'm sure some people don't feel that way. Maybe there's some other guys that I'm missing, but I just feel like it's him, and then Hendon Hooker is obviously the most memorable. But outside that, it's like you can't make as big of attachments to some of these guys just because they haven't been here nearly as long. Now he was here 3 seasons, but again, it didn't play for a lot of 2023. So, and obviously the fan base was supportive of him then. Don't get me wrong, but it's a rare combination to see a fan base be that supportive of a transfer while he's here. Just because they're not as well established if they don't come in as freshmen. I don't feel like.
Yeah, and I don't know how about how you felt, but when there was news of him coming to Tennessee before he even committed, I was very excited about that and about the potential. And then when he got to Tennessee, I don't think he ever fully got to let that potential shine, but I mean, I will always remember Brew McCoy as a workhorse. Like we talked about him being willing to block downfield and everything of that nature. I mean, he just never gave up, and I feel like he's an embodiment of like evolve for life, like which is a phrase that's been thrown around a lot like the past 10-15 years. And I think that Brew is evolve for life, and it was nice getting to see him play in orange and be able to give some good memories. Like who will ever he had one of the best catches in Tennessee football history with
Yeah,
the Alabama game, man. Tennessee wouldn't have won that game if Brew McCoy wasn't on the field.
yeah, absolutely. That's a play that you could call it the most important catch of that season, possibly. He made a lot of plays that they weren't looked at as nearly in a heroic lens as some of the others we've seen here recently, like Chase McGrath's field goal and Will Brooks's game sealing interception against Alabama this year, because it was not the final play or the nail in the coffin, so to speak, in some of those games, but it's set up to that, and that's important. And he was able to do that and be a contributor. We talked about it when he went undrafted, and obviously now we know why, but uh, he had an ability that was maybe a little bit overlooked in wide receivers at times, and that is his ability to block downfield. It's just something you don't see all the time in wide receivers, but Tennessee's had a few of those guys now come through here, and one of which has really carved out a role for himself with the 49ers now, and Jawan Jennings. So, he's not your diva wide receiver whatsoever. He's willing to do all kinds of things to help contribute for a team. And again, it is really sad to see it come to an end, but also if he feels that is the best decision for him, then good for him.
Yeah, and then plus too, I mean, with how much the fan base loved Brew McCoy and everything, and the memories that he gave, like with Alabama and whatnot. I mean, if he's living in the Knoxville area, I'm sure he's going to be just fine. He'll be
Yeah.
able to find a career outside of football, and if he goes into like a bar in Knoxville, I guarantee he doesn't have to pay for a drink ever again. So there's still some benefits to be made based on his career here and the legacy that he left as a volunteer.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I saw on another podcast earlier this week when something was brought up about a certain quarterback that transferred out of here. Um, but this could be a problem with the portal era in general, just with the way these kids are moving around so often. But when you're jumping to 2, 3, 4 schools in college, particularly those who are going to more than two, um, when you are looking to live in, say, Knoxville as a tight end that transferred to 2 other schools afterward, and you're looking to Tennessee alums to try and help get you jobs or find a house for you, can you really? Are they really going to be as willing to help you as if you're a guy like, say, Brew, who played here for 3 years and is not all about himself by any means? Like I feel like that's something that Brew has that will help him long term should he try and stay here. And again, a lot of the reason why the guys that stayed here 4 years are doing just fine here in Knoxville, like Zakai Ziegler, for example. Of course, that was not as much of a choice because of what happened to his house his freshman year of college in New York. But Tennessee helped him out, and he's eternally grateful for the fan base for it. He'll probably be here for a long time after college, I would imagine.
Yeah, and what you've mentioned with like players bouncing around and maybe not having the opportunity to like intertwine with alumni and to get like acclimated to the city that they finished their career at. Like I've had conversations like that with my brother before, and it was based around the transfer portal. And like I've talked about like some players from Tennessee's past that like, they're always going to be remembered and they're always going to be taken care of just because of the sheer fact that they were a familiar face that stayed around. I mean, take Tyler Barron for an example. Like if he would have stayed at Tennessee, he probably would have been comfortable. I mean, albeit he's playing in the NFL, don't get me wrong. I mean, he's going to get his money, but I mean, does he leave that same kind of legacy there in Miami? Like, is he going to be treated that same way amongst Miami fans? Probably not.
Now, and some of this sickness too is starting in high school too. It's not just a college thing. Like Tyler Barron played well because he is originally from our neck of the woods. He was I think he wasn't in high school. I think he went to middle school at Brentwood Academy,
Really?
transferred to Innsworth, and then transferred to Knox Catholic sometime in like his sophomore or junior year. So it's not just him. Like there are other guys that will go to 4 high schools in 4 years, and it just looks way worse than that. Like here's an example for you: Brandon Huntley Hatfield. That guy started at Clarksville Academy, and then went to 2 other high schools. came to Tennessee, transferred to Louisville for 2 years, and then transferred to NC State.
Yeah, and I feel like you especially see a lot of this with some of the young high school quarterbacks. Like I've seen so many recruits like bounce around. Like even Nico, he went to two different high schools, didn't he? Like I think he went to Warren High School and Long Beach Poly.
That sounds right.
Yeah, and like I don't know, like me, like I don't know. I've never been on the level to play in college football or NFL or anything, but there's something to be said about like staying around with your team and trying to build something, go in there
Yeah.
and like building bonds with your teammates and stuff. How can you have strong bonds with your teammates or be like a great leader for a team when you just walk in 1 year and leave? I feel like you don't just you don't cement as much of a legacy.
Yeah, and you've seen a lot of NFL players talk about this too. Like one in particular I can think of is Tyrann Mathieu. He said he really enjoyed being at LSU and learning from guys like Patrick Peterson and Morris Claiborne when he was down there, and those were super instrumental in helping him get to the league. Now it's just instant gratification is what everybody wants now, and that's just I think hurting the sport in a way, but over time I think it could heal itself. I've talked about this before, but I do wonder at what point coaches will begin to value homegrown talent that they recruit from high school over guys out of the transfer portal, because the transfer portal is just it's such a game of chance, it feels like.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went in that direction. I mean, look at how many players in the NFL too that have came from being like 0 stars or 3 stars. I mean, the number one overall pick in this year's draft was a 0 star recruit coming out of high school. Um, so I mean, it's not always what you see on paper, and I would not be surprised if more coaches started trying to find more of these 3 stars and work them up and everything. And I feel like a lot of these kids too in certain states, like it may be poor coaching. There may not be many eyes in the city that they're in or whatnot, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not talented enough to go play at the next level. It's just that unfortunate circumstances has kept them from getting the eyes that they've needed for these recruiters to come out and try to get them to come to their team. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised in the future if more coaches just tried to go to in-state. And like, there's a lot of talent in Tennessee to be had too, that especially nowadays, because I know in recent years, a lot of more quarterback talent's been coming out from Tennessee. Like I remember when I was in high school, one of the best quarterbacks coming out from the state. I mean, he would he was just good enough to barely make it to Nebraska. And then the other one that was good around that time too, he ended up going to like Chattanooga. And you're talking about like some of the best quarterbacks in the state, but now that's not the case. We got George McIntyre's now. We got so many other great talent. Like Tennessee's growing in the high school sports department, and I think Tennessee could benefit by being able to get some more of these homegrown guys and not give them up to other schools, like how I think his name's Jake Bringingstool or something. I don't know.
Briningstool.
Bringingstool, like with
Yeah.
Clemson, like he very well could have played for Tennessee if like put more eyes on him and everything, or talk to him.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider, and you would like to defend your borders as much as possible from opposing Power Five programs from coming in and poaching. But at the same time, it's like some of those places like Georgia and Florida, they have no need for it. Texas, why would you look outside the state of Texas for high school football talent? Just
Yeah,
because it's just all right there in front of you.
yeah. And
But no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and that's the one thing that makes the transfer portal a little bit interesting, because I feel like teams like Florida and Miami have had the benefit for a long time getting all like some of the best athletes in the country, because that's just where they're from. Like South Florida, that's where most of your best athletes come out of high school. Um, so maybe like the transfer portal can help balance some of that stuff out as well.
Well, we've talked a lot about the transfer portal and some of the bad things it's done. Maybe this next thing we have to discuss is a good thing to come out of the transfer portal, and it's certainly a positive development for Tennessee's quarterback room, as Joey Aguilar should have arrived by today here in Knoxville. He has just graduated from Appalachian State, which is important because that allows him to get into the building, learn Tennessee's offense, and it's a tough offense to learn this quickly if you're not used to the pace of it. Now, since he's a quarterback, maybe that's not the case, but uh, just thinking about this, like because we haven't seen this very often. We haven't seen quarterbacks transfer to new systems and have to learn everything in what 3.5 months, basically. Very often, we certainly haven't seen it here at Tennessee.
No, but I think it's great that Tennessee's finally does have him on campus now, because I think today was the day that he came in, or it was
Yeah,
reported that he'd be here on Monday. So I mean, it's going to be great to like build chemistry, to learn the offense and everything. And if he wants a good opportunity to be the starter this year, then he's going to have to start learning all of this stuff pretty quick. And it's going to be interesting to see how he meshes with the team. I know like the practices is harder to get information out from there, but a lot of these press conferences, he's going to be the biggest topic there. And it's going to be interesting to see what Coach Heupel says and what the other coaches say about him, and to finally get him in there too and see what he has to say, because I've not really seen much on him yet, and it'll be exciting to see what he has to say about the offense, who he likes, and see what the receivers have to say about him and such.
yeah, and he's got slim pickings this year at receiver. It feels like, unless they decide to use like Amari Jefferson or one of the freshmen in a little bit more of an extended role, but um, and sometimes you can tell in practice from the quarterbacks just who's doing well and who's not. And I say that because I remember, I guess it was my senior year, 2023. I was at several of their fall ball practices and got to watch Joe Milton and Nico warm up and do routes on air and all that fun stuff. Joe was clearly better at that than Nico. Obviously, it didn't translate well to the game, but Tennessee was pretty dogged in its effort to keep Joe Milton as the starter that season. They were pretty adamant that he was better than Nico in 2023. And I'll be honest, after this season, they were probably right. They were probably right about it the entire time. So, all that to say, you can learn more than you think at practices, but also don't read too far into them at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've seen. I don't want to talk bad about him or whatever, but I mean, like Nico, a lot of his highlights coming out of high school and everything were just those 7-on-7 things, and he looked phenomenal in those. But then when it came to game time, when he was playing at Tennessee, a lot of times it seemed like it took him too long to make reads and to make a decision to throw the ball downfield. And it's got to be a lot easier to make those decisions when you don't have 7 people rushing you and trying to take your head off.
Yeah. And, I mentioned this last night. Actually, I was on the Florida show here on the Voice of College Football Network. Shout out to those of you who watched that show last night, and if you are a Florida fan that happened to be watching that show, appreciate you for hate watching along tonight. But I will say, I think I just completely lost my train of thought there for a second. I don't think Nico leaving is something that will lower Tennessee's ceiling necessarily. It was Dylan Sampson getting drafted that could potentially lower the ceiling. But I do think this is a team that is very much capable of staying in the top 25 over the course of the season. I know there's a lot of polls that are not giving Tennessee a whole lot of love, and it's fair right now, I would say. But I think one of these quarterbacks is going to come out and surprise you, just because there is a lot of talent in that quarterback room that is being ignored, even if Joey Aguilar doesn't end up being the guy this year. Like you just look at it, Jake Merklinger, if he plays more high school football, probably a 5-star. Um, and that's solely based on the numbers he put up his senior year, which are pretty nuts. I want to say it was like 38 touchdowns that year, which is pretty crazy for high school. And then of course George McIntyre. Everybody that is a Tennessee fan in this state was super excited to get him in the 2025 recruiting cycle. So it's all there, and there's more coming too. Faison Brandon, who could potentially be better than all three of those guys Tennessee has right now. So I don't think it's getting worse at all with Nico gone by any means.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, I felt like the situation was already interesting with Nico coming. Like, even if Nico's on the team, I already thought it was going to be an interesting season based on like how thin Tennessee is at receiver, how much talent they've lost in the defensive backfield, and then like losing Dylan Sampson too. That's just not someone that you're going to replace overnight. And Tennessee's for sure not going to have a Dylan Sampson on the team this upcoming season. But I think Tennessee, I think Josh Heupel's a good coach, and I think regardless of who's on the roster, I think Tennessee's going to try to compete no matter what. And I don't know how good Tennessee will be this year, but I will say like most of the games that you think Tennessee are going to win, they're probably going to win, I would imagine. And I don't know, having three quarterbacks that have potential to be great in the roster is a good problem to have too.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it can be, but if you do favor a guy that maybe is not performing up to his billing, then that can be an issue because sometimes you hear the phrase thrown around when you have two quarterbacks, you actually have none. I don't think that's the case here. I hope it's not the case here, but sometimes that can be a problem. I mean, you saw it at Florida for part of the season last year. And, once Mertz got injured against Tennessee, their ceiling rose exponentially with DJ Lagway, it felt like. Not to say Mertz was a bad quarterback necessarily, but I just think you had so much more there with Lagway than you ever did with Mertz.
Yeah, and then like I would say more often than not, like trying to shuffle two or three quarterbacks isn't the right move. I feel like most of the times it doesn't. But I mean, I remember back in the day, LSU was running like two quarterbacks, and their defense was good enough to make them win games. Like they were competing with Alabama
You
every year.
can't win like that anymore.
Nah, yeah, I mean it's a different game now. I mean it's more pass heavy for sure than it now than it was back then.
Yeah, Jarrett Lee and Jordan Jefferson would die in the Josh Heupel system. I can almost guarantee that. But yeah, Joey Aguilar is here now. He's learning the system, and that's exactly what Tennessee needs to be hearing this week. Just because I know that's been a little bit of a monkey on Tennessee's back in a sense, for a little while. But it's good to hear that is finally over with. So we'll see how the quarterback battle plays out this fall. SEC Media Days could be pretty interesting for that reason, just depending on who gets invited or who is chosen to speak. I don't know if any of the three of them will be, but we'll see. And then one last bit of news we have for this week on the Tennessee football front is Cooper Mays working out with the Miami Dolphins. Did see where everybody signed their deals with their teams that are rookies that were drafted. So that includes James Pierce, Omar Norman Lott, Dante Thornton Jr., and Dylan Sampson. But Cooper May is getting to work out with the Dolphins, and I guess that reunites him with Jalen Wright down there in Miami. I think that's a guy that's very valuable to a team should you get him. And I think the Dolphins, I hope the Dolphins will see something in him to try to keep him around on the roster. I'm not sure who their center is right now and what Cooper May's path to the field would be, but obviously was not thought of highly on draft boards. But you look over the span of college football last season, he was far and away one of the best centers in the country.
I mean, he was good enough to become a semifinalist for the Remington Trophy, which is the award for the best center in college football. And then plus, like with him being overlooked as much as he has been, I would imagine that Cooper Mays has got a huge chip on his shoulder, and I don't think that he'll take this opportunity lightly. Um, I don't know if he ends up making the team or not, but I would say that he probably has a strong chance considering all the ammunition that he has to try to give his 100% effort. And he's a talented enough offensive lineman to eventually find his way in the NFL. I know there's concerns with injuries. I know that there was concerns with his size, but sometimes like you just find a way. I mean, Trey Smith found a way with the Chiefs, even with issues, his health issues with his lungs and everything. I mean, he's right now going to Super Bowls, being one of the better offensive guards in the NFL. So maybe he can get past the injuries and his size. I mean, there's been undersized people before, even at the center position. I mean, for the past couple of years, I know Jason Kelsey has been in the spotlight a lot. I don't even know if he's bigger. I don't even know if he's bigger than Cooper Mays at all. And I know we're talking about arguably a future Hall of Famer, so it might not be a fair comparison. But just because some things are one way doesn't mean that it's going to end up being the way that you think it's going to be. So I'm excited to see what Cooper Mays does, and hopefully he makes a roster spot.
Yeah, I'm just looking right now at the Dolphins roster. They have one guy. They have two centers. They have Sean Harlow, who is 30 years old, played at Oregon State in college. He goes about 6'4", 284, so I'm not sure that's bigger than Cooper necessarily.
Well, they said I saw, or Kelsey was 6'4".
I don't know.
Well, because I saw that Cooper Mays is listed like 6'4" on like Tennessee's website and stuff. But I saw something else. I think it was a Pro Day website or something that had him listed at like 6'1" or 6'2" or something. So I don't know if they inflated his height or not, because I know Samson, I think, was listed at 5'11" when he was playing at Tennessee. But then when it came to the combine time, he was listed at 5'8". So a lot of those teams, they like to inflate those heights and weights.
So he's not as tall as either of those guys I just saw. He's 6'2", but he's 305, so he's a little heavier than both of them. Because the heaviest of the two guys is this Andrew Meyer guy, who is a 25-year-old rookie from UTEP.
Okay, so they got a 25-year-old rookie.
Yeah. Which I guess Cooper is almost 25. In fact, he may already be 25. I don't know for sure. Well, no, he may be 24. I could be completely wrong about that.
Well, it doesn't sound like there's like a crazy, there's crazy talent from the center position for the Dolphins. I mean,
No.
he very well could get that second spot. I don't know if he'd end up being the starter or anything like that, but I mean, if they got a 25-year-old rookie
From
on that
UTEP? Like
from UTEP,
what is UTEP producing in football that's other than Aaron Jones? Aaron Jones is like their best football product here of late. But outside of him, I can't think of any other major players in the NFL right now at a UTEP.
yeah, exactly. I would like to think that Cooper Mays could take his spot, regardless of getting drafted or not.
Yeah. So that path to the field, if we don't think it is as difficult as they're making it, or what am I trying to say? If it's only two guys and neither of them were nearly as highly rated prospects as Cooper Mays was out of college, then you would think he could make the field just fine. But again, we don't know. And of course, injuries have unfortunately been an issue for him over the years. So that could always play a factor.
And you're talking about an experience center too at the same time. Like, not only is he getting this opportunity with mini camp, but he's also arguably the most experienced offensive lineman that Tennessee's had in like recent memory. I mean, he was getting playing time as a freshman, and I know in like the past couple seasons he's like really stepped it up, but this is a guy that has a lot of experience, so he may not need to be coached up as much as some of these other players. And I don't know how that 25-year-old is from UTEP, but I would like to think that Tennessee's coaches and being in the SEC would do a better job at preparing him for the NFL than UTEP would.
So that's about all I got on Cooper Mays. You got anything else, Jordan?
Just congratulations to him, because we were wondering where he was going to be at for a while, and of course we did with Brew, and we found that out too. But good for him for getting an opportunity, and hopefully he finds a spot for him in the league.
Yeah, always good to see guys try to find their way onto the roster one way or another. And some of these undrafted guys have done well enough to make cuts here in the past. Jalen McCullough is a recent one that I can think of, guy that didn't really stick out while he was here at Tennessee for the eons that he was here. He was here a long time. Um, didn't get drafted by the Rams, but made the cut and ended up being one of the hidden gems in that rookie class. So there's always that possibility with some of these guys that went undrafted this season.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I can't remember if he got drafted or not, because he was really good at Tennessee. But Jalen Reeves-Maben, I mean, he's quietly done a lot for the Lions as a special teams player, and he's
Yeah.
he's he's found his way in the league, where the odds are stacked against him at one point.
Yeah. Injuries unfortunately did hurt him a lot here at Tennessee, no pun intended. But when he was healthy, he was really good here. Um, I just remember, I think it was maybe the Battle of Bristol was the last time we saw him suited up.
I think you might be right.
Because I want to say he went into the tunnel and then I never saw him suit up again that season or any other time as a Tennessee player.
And he was really good when he was at Tennessee too. When he could stay on the field and be healthy, I thought like him and AJ Johnson were probably two of the better linebackers I've seen play at Tennessee. Maybe if you
Yeah.
go all the way back to like Rico McCoy, he was pretty good too.
Yeah. There's some good names on that list. Definitely want to hold that thought for what we have planned for the end of the show. But for now, let's maybe focus on the future of Tennessee football. In fact, this is definitely the future of Tennessee football. So I did another little poll this week. It didn't get nearly as much traction as the one last week, but I still appreciate everybody who contributed in it. And if you'd like to leave a comment, you can tell me and Jordan what you think Tennessee's biggest trap game is this year on the schedule. Now, trap games are a very subjective matter. Some people don't believe they exist. Some people think that it's just a game that you didn't expect to be difficult that has suddenly become difficult on the schedule. Other people think it's a game that is before a big game that you're just looking ahead of. So this is an entirely subjective matter that we're dealing in right now. So we may disagree pretty sharply on what we consider a trap game on the schedule for Tennessee this year. But I want to go ahead and get to the poll um, that you guys answered to in sometime last week. I forget when exactly, but 4 of you said Oklahoma would be Tennessee's biggest trap game of the season. And I'm assuming those of you who said that are the same ones that I mentioned, that second definition, a game that you just didn't think would be difficult becomes difficult. And that is right, honestly. But you look at where that game falls in the schedule, it is the last before Tennessee's second bye of the year. So, by that definition, it may not be a trap game. And again, there is a lot of season between now and then. But I do think Oklahoma will be considerably better this year than last.
I will say that Oklahoma played surprisingly better than I think a lot of people would have thought last season against Tennessee. I mean, ultimately Tennessee got the victory. I think it was by about 10 points or so.
Yeah, Tennessee really controlled that game. Oklahoma just had to try and find a way back in it. They were clawing back there late.
Yeah, but you never know watching these Tennessee games whenever a team can get hot there towards the end. But yeah, I mean, Oklahoma and everything, I think with the bye weeks and stuff, maybe it doesn't jump out as like a trap game. But I mean, like you got to think that Oklahoma too, they have all that history of Josh Heupel, and I feel like that was part of the headlines last season. But I mean, they're going to want to win, especially after Tennessee came into their home stadium last year and won. With it being Knoxville, it'll be interesting. I mean, of course, Tennessee will have the home field advantage and everything, and Neyland is not a fun place for opposing teams to go into. But Oklahoma's um, revamped a little bit in the offseason. They got John Mateer, I think from Washington State. And I was looking up his stats earlier today, and I'm pulling them up now. 3,100 yards passing, and then 29 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So that's something that Oklahoma struggled with a little bit last season. In 2024, their leading passer was Jackson Arnold, and he only had 1,412 touchdowns. and their offense wasn't really that great. I mean, their leading rusher had less than 600 yards. So, but getting a good quarterback in the offseason and everything, I feel like Oklahoma could be more underrated than people would think. And you can never overlook Brent Venables either as a defensive mind. So I'm sure that he is taking notes a lot from last year's game, and I'm sure that he'll be even more prepared coming into Knoxville this season.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But and I'll say too, with the offensive situation they had last year at Oklahoma, it was shockingly bad how they just had no luck with injuries whatsoever. They had what, 5 or 6 guys last year that were playing wide receiver that were out at least at some point over the course of the season, a couple of which missed pretty much the entire rest of the season after the first 2 or 3 games, which I think hindered them a lot. And with Mateer, he's definitely on paper a better quarterback than what you saw with Jackson Arnold, and they've brought in other pieces too. I know there's at least one receiver that they've got this year that should be better than what they had last, and Jaden Ott at running back, who was a proven commodity when he was at Cal. It's just a matter of how those guys will do against better competition, I think, because Mateer, he came out and balled out against Mountain West teams last year because the Pac-2 is no longer attached to the traditional 12 teams in the Pac-12 conference now, and it's basically just its own hybrid between a group of 5 and Power 4 conference. I guess now they're calling it Group of 6 because the Pac-12 is no longer considered Power 5 or Power 4. Realignment is messy. Bottom line from everything I just said there. But I think people are right to suspect that is a trap game on the schedule. So I had 4 votes for Oklahoma just in the poll. 2 of you said Syracuse would be a trap game. And it's the first game of the season. It's your biggest opponent. So I don't know if that's truly a trap game. Maybe they're a little better than you think. It's one of those games Tennessee has not a lot to gain from and everything to lose in, I feel like. A lot like NC State last year. A team that you don't really benefit from beating up on. And then if you lose to them, well, guess what? You're probably winning 6 or 7 games at the very most, just because that shuts a lot of doors for you over the course of the season.
Yeah, and that could be a good game to find out answers. I mean, it's first game of the year. Get a little bit, get a little bit of an idea to see how Tennessee will end up faring. Syracuse is a little concerning to me as well, mainly considering how they were on offense last season. Like I know Kyle McCord's gone. He was leading in like passing and touchdowns,
He
and
also had a 5 interception game against Pittsburgh last year, so
yeah,
he was liable for some duds of performances. But overall, Fran Brown was right to give Ryan Day the bottles of champagne.
100%, 100%. The one thing that does concern me about Syracuse, though, is just how much they like to throw the ball downfield. And with so much uncertainty with Tennessee's like losing 4 safeties, losing these defensive backs across the board. I mean, they were throwing the ball deep a lot with Syracuse. And I think that there was, I think Kyle McCord had like 2 games where he had over 60 attempts, maybe. And then I saw him on the Gruden quarterback thing. And I think he said he had 40 attempts before even halftime at one point. So this is a team that likes to throw the football, and they can run the football a little bit too, or at least statistically speaking, because their leading rusher, he had 1,000 yards, but he also had 16 touchdowns. Now, I don't know how much that had to do with them being such a pass heavy offense or not, but Syracuse, I wouldn't overlook them if I was Tennessee. And plus, with it being a neutral site game too, I mean, you never know. You
Yeah,
never know.
I don't think Tennessee will overlook it just because that's a game that your first game of the season. So you shouldn't be overlooking it. And that's honestly more of a home game for Tennessee, I feel like, than a road game just because of geography. I don't know who their quarterback is going to be at Syracuse this year. I know they got Steve Angeli, who Tennessee initially wanted to hype up in the transfer portal. They do have one pretty nice running back in Yassine Willis, who is kind of one of your bigger bruiser running backs, goes about 6'1", 230. And then you got a couple other guys too that out of the portal, and then just recruiting at wide receiver right now. It sounds like they're doing some good things there. I know they did lose Trevor Pena to Penn State, I believe, a couple weeks back, but sounds like they've got plenty of other guys coming in. So looking at ESPN right now, Tennessee is favored by 10.5 in that game. Of course, we still have a long way to go between now and then, but that's where it stands right now with Syracuse. So again, two of you mentioned Syracuse as Tennessee's biggest trap game of the season. And then I got a couple other like one votes in here. First one that I got was Arkansas, which when you look at the schedule, that does seem like a trap game just with the fact that it is situated after a bye week and before Alabama. So that is your typical look ahead game. But the thing is, this is one of the two teams that beat you last, or three teams that beat you last season, two in the regular season, I should say. You should have no problem being motivated to play that game. That's my only argument with that. But by definition, if you're going off of a game that falls before a big game, then yes, that could be considered a trap game.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, it 100% looks like a trap game. Don't get me wrong, but like as you mentioned, I mean, Tennessee has so much fuel to the fire with losing to Arkansas last year that I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee gets up a little bit that they would just start running it up a little bit against Arkansas based on what happened last season. I didn't really think of Arkansas on my list of trap games, but it's mainly because of that reason. It's because I don't see Tennessee losing to Arkansas in back-to-back years, especially maybe they overlooked them last year, maybe not. I'm not sure. I wasn't in the locker room, but I will say they know what Arkansas has to offer based on last year's result. So I think Tennessee will come really prepared for that game. I don't see Tennessee struggling as much against Arkansas.
And I would say that was also situated in the typical look ahead spot because it's after a bye week and right before Florida, who Tennessee, despite losing to quite often, should be motivated to play against. So yeah, that one definitely sat there. But we've also seen Tennessee win in those situations too, like LSU in 2022. Now there were some other factors that really helped Tennessee out, like the 11 a.m. kickoff. That's a win before the game even starts in Baton Rouge. So that obviously helped out a great deal. But yeah, that again makes sense for a trap game, but they should be motivated, I would say. And then I got a couple more submissions here. This one, I know who this one is from. Shout out if you're listening, you know who you are. Motivated Mark Stoops at Kentucky. Now, honestly, with where it is situated, it's before Oklahoma, which Oklahoma is the last game before a bye, and it could be a big game with where it is. It just in the season and how Oklahoma does to start the season. It could be considered a trap game, especially if you beat Alabama down there and you're potentially hung over because that would be your first game after Alabama should you get it done. But if you lose to Alabama, I don't think that's the case. Now, again, this is Tennessee we're talking about. The Tennessee does not fear Kentucky, but you cannot lose to Kentucky. So therefore, it's never a fun experience if you're a Tennessee fan.
Yeah, Kentucky's always an interesting one because it's one that you expect to win, but if you do lose to Kentucky, that stings a lot. But Tennessee has fared phenomenally against Kentucky historically. I think it was 2019. I think Kentucky was ranked near the top 10. They may have been 11. I think they were number 10 in the country or something like that. And Tennessee had like the goal. I think that was the game at the goal line stand. And Daryl Taylor had like 4 sacks. So even Kentucky's best, that was probably Kentucky's best team
I don't know
Uh,
about that. There were some other ones, the 18 and the 21 season, the Levis season up there when Tennessee won that game. That team won 9 and I think like a Citrus Bowl that year against Iowa. And then in 18 when they were down here, they won 9 and I think also a Citrus Bowl against Penn State. That was the Terry Wilson. I guess he's Josh Hines Allen. He's no longer Josh Allen. Benny Snell was on that team. Tennessee won that game by 17.
yeah, I mean,
So,
all
like, their
these,
best teams ever have not done well against Tennessee.
yeah, I mean, honestly, they haven't fared well against Tennessee since Bear Bryant was their coach. So I don't know. I'm not too concerned about Kentucky just because I feel like there is sometimes mental blocks with certain teams. I feel like Kentucky's mental block is Tennessee. They can't seem to overcome that hurdle. But to play devil's advocate, that's how Tennessee's been with Florida in like recent
Yeah.
years. Like we've
Oh,
talked about
absolutely.
Florida just throwing in whoever. Like doesn't matter if they're playing two tight ends at quarterback, which they've done, and still beat Tennessee. It doesn't matter. Sometimes there's just some kind of voodoo in the air that keeps teams from winning. And I just don't see Tennessee losing to Kentucky, to be honest.
Uh, 3 more submissions here. And spoiler alert, 2 of them, well, one of them is no trap games, and the other one is every game. So that's just two extremes right there that what we're throwing out there. Don't trust anyone is what one of those is saying. And then the trap games, I think the direct comment was just like that's some BS narrative that media likes to put out that trap games exist. So maybe they mean nothing to you, and that's okay. That's okay. I'm not judging anybody. And then the other vote is for Florida, and I'll be honest, I don't agree with this one. I really don't. Because Florida, you expect that one to be difficult. Because again, I told you guys earlier, I was on that Florida show last night. I truly think that just on paper right now, with the fact that Florida at least has a proven quarterback, that is probably Tennessee's toughest game at the moment. I just look around Georgia at home. Look, I know that Kirby Smart's going to have a good team. I'm not at all saying Tennessee will win that game. I also don't trust Gunnar Stockton. We don't know what Alabama's got at quarterback with Ty Simpson. He may be really good this year, but still very unproven, largely unproven. John Mateer at Oklahoma, proven in a lower level of competition. How will he translate to SEC play? DJ Lagway has SEC experience and got a lot better once he was the primary guy after the Tennessee game last season. And you look at that stretch of games there to end the season because it is the second to last game. It's just 3 games. You have the bye week, and then New Mexico State is your first game out of the bye week. Imagine if that's a trap game before Florida. You're looking ahead there. Wait, Austin Peay 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That may have been a look ahead game. Maybe they took Florida for granted in the swamp. That also could have been a trap game potentially. Florida was definitely not better than Tennessee that year for a lot of the season. But after Florida, you have Vanderbilt. Surely Tennessee is not looking past Florida for Vanderbilt. I just can't imagine a world in which that's the case. So by definition, I don't think that's a trap game. I just think that's a difficult game.
Yeah, I would agree too. I mean, when I was like coming up with my notes on the trap games and stuff, I was thinking about Florida. Like, I think it's going to be a really tough game. I don't know by definition if it is a trap game, but playing in Gainesville, especially late in the season, and everything with playoff hopes on the line, everything, it's going to be difficult. And Lagway, I know his stats aren't insane out there. I mean, he did have a little bit of injuries and stuff, but I mean, he is a very talented quarterback, and he can complete a pass deep um, whenever. I mean, all it takes is one bad mistake and you got a touchdown right there with him. So, and not to mention all the athletes that Florida pull in, like we were mentioned a little bit earlier with the recruits coming out of the South Florida area and everything. Like Florida's always a difficult team to begin with, regardless of how their record is. It doesn't matter if they have 2 games that they've won the entire year. It doesn't matter if they've had 10 games. Florida's going to play Tennessee as hard as they can. And I would agree with you that it's probably going to be Tennessee's most difficult game of the year just based on what we know now. Like, of course, we'll find out more as the season goes on, but there's question marks with Alabama. There's question marks with Georgia. Florida, they turned things around big time last year. And on top of that, they had arguably the hardest schedule in college football, or at least heading into the season. And this year, they're going to have another difficult schedule, but Florida overperformed, I would say, significantly based on what we thought going into the 2024 season. And I only imagine that Florida is going to take a bigger step this year, too. So I think it's a very concerning game for Tennessee. I don't know if it's by definition a trap game, but Tennessee, if they can beat Florida, then I think that's going to say a lot about the team.
Yeah, and we were talking about this last night on the Florida show that I was on, the Florida Gators Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. With that game being later in the season, maybe it helps Tennessee. Maybe Tennessee is a little bit more sure of itself by that point in the season than it is in years past when it's going down there like the third week of the year and they're still trying to discover themselves. And Florida at least appears to have things figured out and catches Tennessee and wins it by a couple touchdowns. So maybe that's a difference. But again, Florida usually in those years has fallen off after it's beaten Tennessee. Tennessee beat Florida last year. Florida got better as the year went on, which is something we're not accustomed to seeing. So a couple different things that we are traditionally used to seeing in that rivalry are not going according to plan. But I will say this: if college football playoff hopes are on the line in Gainesville, that changes things
Yeah.
significantly for Tennessee, and I would argue probably for the worse.
Yeah, because you would imagine that those fans are going to show up and show out, especially even if Florida doesn't have a chance to go in the playoffs, which I think they very well do going into the season. But even if they don't, even if they lose a couple of games before playing against Tennessee, those fans will be more than happy to show out, um, just for the sake of ruining Tennessee's what they have going and keeping them out of the playoffs. They're going to be very motivated. But I will say there are two positives to take away from the situation for Tennessee fans. One, since it's later in the year, you're not going to have to deal with that Florida heat. And from what I've heard about the swamp is they designed it specifically for the sun to beat down on the opposing team's sideline and everything while they're sitting there in the shade. So they've always had that unfair advantage and they're used to it too, practicing there all the time. So it'll be a little bit cooler with it being later in the year. But and also too, there'll be more film. I mean, Tennessee oftentimes, I mean, years past, Tennessee is usually playing the third week of September, still kind of early in the year and everything, still trying to figure things out. Tennessee playing them later on, they're going to have a lot more film to work with. They're going to have a better understanding of what Florida is capable of. And hopefully Tennessee can make the right adjustments to where they can beat the Gators, but it's going to be a difficult game for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if it would be, depending on how good the teams are, could see College Game Day there or something like that too. Like it's going to
Yeah.
be a big event.
And looking at Florida this year, that schedule is very difficult. They've got return trips to LSU, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. They get Texas at home. They're at Miami, who I do think will take a considerable step back this year. And then they're at Kentucky as their other road game, which I don't see being too much of a challenge just on paper. So they will have their work cut out for them on the road, but I'm sure if Tennessee somehow finds itself in a college football playoff situation, which I don't necessarily think is a possibility right now, that I think could be a pretty difficult challenge for Tennessee should it occur. But that's all we've got on trap games for tonight. That's all the submissions I got for them. I don't really see any other games that I would call trap games on the schedule. Just uh, with the situation necessarily with where they are in the schedule. Like I know Mississippi State can only get better this year, and that game is in Starkville, but it's also the last game before a bye. So what are you looking ahead to? The week off? Like that's about all I got there. And you just don't have any others that should be trap games. East Tennessee State's before Georgia. That shouldn't be a trap game unless you're Vanderbilt and lose by 20 to East Tennessee State to start a season. You never know. Tennessee shouldn't do that, though. All right. To close out the show, and we do appreciate all of you for hanging with us despite our technical difficulties at the beginning of everything. Um, we're going to go through our favorite players, our 5 favorite players that we grew up watching that maybe some people have forgotten about. This is always a fun game to play. Um, the meme, I guess it's a tweet, but dudes can just sit around, name old athletes, and have the best time ever. That's what I do all the time with my friends. And I'm sure Jordan does it too. We're going to do it right now.
Oh yeah.
So, Jordan, who are your 5 favorite Tennessee football players that most people have probably forgotten about by now?
Well,
Or not
some of
most
the
people. That we're young guys, so maybe they haven't all forgotten about them, but they are names that will probably get lost to the annals of time here in the coming years.
yeah, so some of these players like they're familiar they're familiar names to Vols fans, but may not have heard them in a long time. The first guy that I have mentioned on here, you'll remember his game-winning uh pick six, or maybe it was on a 2-point conversion now that I'm thinking about it, against
No, it was a
Vanderbilt.
pick six. I
It
know who you're
was.
talking about.
Hey, the whistle, I didn't hear it. I didn't hear the whistle. But of
His
course
knee didn't touch the ground.
his knee did not touch the ground, did not touch the ground, did not hear a whistle. But yeah, of course I'm talking about Eric Gordon. I really liked him a lot when he was at Tennessee, and like based on what he did like in that Vanderbilt game, and like he's a pretty solid player for the most part. I know that he was overshadowed a little bit playing with people like Prentice Wagner and everything, but Eric Gordon was a guy that I liked in my childhood, and he was a guy that I made custom sliders for in the old college football games because I liked him so much. I wanted him to be better than he actually was in reality. But Eric Gordon was a guy that I liked a lot at Tennessee, and honestly, I wonder what he's up to now. But that Vanderbilt game will always have a special place in my heart because unfortunately during that time Tennessee was struggling with Vanderbilt when James Franklin was there and everything, and Vanderbilt was shockingly winning 9 games a year. It was nice to beat Vanderbilt, as sad as it says, or as sad as it sounds. It was nice to beat them, and especially in a way like that where
That was the only time they beat James Franklin, by the way.
oh yeah, I'm aware. James Franklin was he was a problem when he was Vanderbilt's
Yeah,
coach.
he's a bit of a problem at Penn State right now, but to Penn State,
Yeah,
he can't get past Ohio State and Michigan or whatever other giants there are in the Big Ten. He'll always just be that Mark Richt of the Big Ten now.
yeah, and it's honestly kind of crazy too, because I think he had back-to-back nine-win seasons at Vanderbilt, and like that's not too much better than what he's doing at Penn State, and he was in the SEC. So I don't know what James Franklin's situation's been in with Penn State, but honestly, when I heard that he was going to Penn State, I was like, wow, this is phenomenal for them. And then he's a great coach, but like I thought he was going to be better. But next player on the list, a little bit of a controversial one. I don't know if you got to see him when you were younger or not, but this guy I'm about to talk about, I thought was the second coming of Eric Berry. And he was very talented, showed lots of flashes. And I'm talking about Jansen Jackson.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, it took me a second with the controversial part, but yeah, highly controversial player.
Yeah, highly controversial player. And well, I don't like I don't even know how to like really tackle this. I don't agree with like anything that he's done in the past and everything, and I'm
I
not
don't
gonna
think
say that.
anybody has.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm not gonna say that he's a good person, but when he was playing at Tennessee before everything came out, because some unfortunate things you can look up online happened after he left Tennessee. But I mean, he had pretty good stats his sophomore season. He had almost 70 tackles, 4 for a loss, and 5 interceptions. And I remember when he was playing alongside Eric Berry, I mean, he was even sticking out as a freshman. And honestly, it was to Tennessee's detriment. But one thing I always remember from Jansen Jackson was the North Carolina game when Tennessee was playing in the Music City Bowl. when North Carolina was going down the field and they eventually um kicked the field goal to go into overtime. Right before then, in case people have forgotten, he leveled a dude in the center of the field. Now it ended up being a penalty, but man, did he lay him out. And I know it contributed to Tennessee losing the game, but when I saw that hit based on what he was shown from the rest of the year, I was really excited about him. And it's very disappointing where his life ended up heading. Of course, he got kicked off Tennessee, and then I don't want to mention what he did on the podcast, but you can look it up. Um, Very heartbreaking story for Tennessee, but I do remember him being a very exciting player. Now, the third player I have on here is a little bit more obscure, and I'm talking about Devin Young. I
Oh, yeah.
love I love that guy so much because he was only 5'8" on a good day, and he was not that half bad of a kick returner. And I just remember him being fast in the old college, the NCAA games, and I was like, you know what? We don't play him much at receiver. I know he played a little bit of running back, but we didn't use him too much in the offense. So I made sure to use him a lot in the football games, and
You
I
did him a
was
favor.
Oh, yeah, I did him a favor, and I was putting absurd stats with him and, Tyler Bray on there, and, he's just always fun. I like the smaller players. I'm not a very tall guy myself, so it's good seeing some of these little guys go out there, and I don't know why. I don't know why. He's just stuck with me a little bit. But the second guy, a little bit more familiar, and he played for the Titans for briefly too, Luke Stalker.
Oh,
uh, Tight end for Tyler Bray at Tennessee. The first time that Luke Stalker really stood out to me is I remember Tennessee was playing Kentucky, and he absolutely like leveled a guy. Tyler Bray like gave him the pass, he lowered the shoulder and leveled the dude, and kept going.
he is a
And he
Kentucky native, so it probably meant more to him.
Oh yeah,
Berea,
yeah,
Kentucky.
yeah, and like I don't know, he was pretty good. Like he just kind of got overshadowed during the time though, because there was a lot of other talent Tennessee had in their receiving core and whatnot. But I mean, he was good for at least 300 yards a year. And his junior year, he got 5 touchdowns. But he was always a guy I liked a lot too, and he was big guy as well too. He kind of course, he wasn't as good, but he had a kind of like a similar build to like a Jason Witten, which is, of course, would get every Tennessee fan excited. So,
Yeah.
and not to mention, it was around the time when they started rolling out the Revo Speeds, and he was one of the first players I seen to wear it. So, and I thought those were the coolest helmets in the world when they came out. So, I had a little bit of a weird fixation on that too. But then number one, um, Zach Rogers. Zach Rogers. I love that guy so much. He's another guy that I feel like got overshadowed because he was playing alongside people like Derrick Rogers, Justin Hunter, Cordell Patterson. But I'll never forget when he was playing against NC State. He caught that deep touchdown pass from Tyler Bray and everything, and he was always just a reliable receiver that like I just felt like he was overlooked. He was like wide receiver number 4, yet he always contributed. And unfortunately, he never ended up doing anything in the NFL. But I always thought he was a guy on Tennessee's roster that could have been much better if he didn't have so much talent around him. And in his senior year, he had 7 touchdowns. And that's while that, let me see who else he was playing with here on that team. Because he was sharing, I'm pretty sure Justin Hunter and Derrick Rogers were on that team. Maybe Derrick Rogers is gone, but I mean, like they had Michael Rivera around that time too, and he was just a very underrated Tennessee player. Plus, his older brother played at Tennessee too, so he was kind of like a legacy guy too. So
Yeah.
I always think of those players fondly, especially because they were from like the first couple of years I started watching football, and these were like the first people I was really learning, becoming a fan.
Yeah, and Zach Rogers. Now that you mention, come to think of it, I think I went to church with him for a little bit in Nashville.
Really?
It was after he was at UT. This has been several years now, but he married a girl that grew up at the church that I went to. So yeah, he was there at least for a little while. I don't know if he still goes there, probably not, but yeah, did see him around every now and again. Never talked
Yeah.
to him though.
Well, funny thing about him is I got a little bit of a connection with him too. My girlfriend, her sister, little convoluted here. Her sister's husband, he actually was like personal friends with like Austin Rogers, and he knew that I was a Tennessee fan. He was too. He was talking to me about him. He's like, "Yeah, me and Austin are like really good friends and all that stuff." And I told him how I was a fan of Zach Rogers and stuff. So seems like a lot of people in the Middle Tennessee area have some sort of connection to the Rogers family.
Yeah. All right. So my list is not nearly as obscure as yours. Honestly, these were just names that I thought of off the top of my head that people are probably going to forget about here in several years because these guys just, they had solid careers here. They just weren't necessarily legends. I didn't think, but again, these are mostly guys from when I first began watching Tennessee football. Um, the first name on my list, and these are in no particular order, by the way. Um, Mount McCullers, Daniel McCullers from the
Oh,
2012 team. Um, Obviously, he was a part of the Swiss cheese Sal defense, which is unfortunate, but he did make it a few years, I think, with the Steelers in the NFL. Um, he was a beast up there on the defensive line. What do you go about 6'7"
oh yeah.
there in
I
the
think
middle?
he was like 6'7", maybe pushing 6'8", like 350. I'll never forget when I heard he was coming to Tennessee. There was a picture of him at practice, next to like one of the trainers, and he looked like he was the trainer's father. Like he was like like towering over this dude. And I was like, we got a literal giant on our team. There's no way that this man could be blocked. Like he looked like a veteran NFL player just coming in at probably like 20 years old or whatnot. Like just absolute mammoth of a human being. I forgot about him, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, that's at least good because some of these guys you will not have forgotten about. But I did want to mention him because that was one of the names that came to mind. But again, a beast of a player when he was here. Did make it a couple years in the NFL, which is good to see for these guys post college. Another name, and this is again another one that I really just first remembered when I first started watching Tennessee football. This is a name that I just remember, and him being kind of a leader on the defense and dealt with some pretty serious adversity off the field. I know he battled cancer for a little bit, and that's Herman Lathers.
Mm.
He was a tackling machine when he was here, and again, unfortunately, did not have much of a career past Tennessee because of some of the complications that he dealt with. But that's just the name that sticks out to me as like one of the first linebackers that I remember here. Him and because it was Nick Gervais was the one that was with
Nick
him
Gervais, yeah.
back in 2010. But I remember both of those guys. That's again because Jordan, it's similar to you. That's about when I first started watching Tennessee football.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Herman Lathers too. I mean, it was unfortunate with the cancer and everything, but I mean, he was a pretty good player when he was on the field at Tennessee, and everything. And I was always a bigger fan of Nick Gervais because he was just a little guy out there and a walk on too. But it was cool. It was cool watching them play and stuff. And believe it or not, I'm actually like Facebook friends with Herman Lathers because I've told Tucker before, when I was a kid, I was such a huge fan of like all these little teams. I tried to add every Tennessee player that would add me, every like SEC player. And he was one of the ones that actually added me back. So shout out to our Facebook friendship, Herman Lathers. We're probably going like 15 years strong.
How about that? You love to hear that. All right, these three, at least two of them have been mentioned in this show already. Um, but number three on my list is Justin Hunter.
Mm,
For nostalgia purposes, again, one of the first ones I remember. I remember his freshman year thinking this is going to be so great. Tennessee is going to have him for like 2, 3 more years. He's going to probably wind up having a great NFL career. And then that ACL tear happened at Florida. And that I just never felt like he was the same after that. Like, and part of it too, like 2012, Cordero Patterson was here, and you had a couple good receivers on that team. Um, but he had like one touchdown catch to beat, I think it was the Chargers in about 2013 for the Titans at the very end of the game, which is that's about my only NFL memory of him. Although I think he did play for them in the 2014 season because I think he had like a touchdown catch overturned or something at a game that I was at that season. But yeah, another one of the first good receivers that I remember vividly from Tennessee.
Yeah, he was one of my favorites as a kid. I remember his freshman year, he started to break out, and my first football game ever was that Florida game that he played in. And I remember he showed a little bit of signs there. And then, of course, like when Tyler Bray ended up taking over as the quarterback, uh, I think the Memphis game later on that season, I mean, they seemed to form a pretty good connection there. And I remember he was always a deep threat, 6'4". Like, I, I honestly, I don't know how old I was at the time, maybe around 11 years old. 11-year-old me was thinking that he was going to be the next Carl Pickens. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out that way, but I was more excited with Justin Hunter than I even was Derrick Rogers and Cordell Patterson, at least at one point. And then, of course, things changed later on. But Justin Hunter is an awesome, awesome Tennessee guy.
And then this next one, also a wide receiver. He was mentioned at some point in this show already, and that is David Rickey himself, Derrick Rogers.
Mm,
Because I remember it was one of my first Tennessee football games because there was a stretch, I think from like 2005 to like 2010, maybe 2011, where I was going to like one game a year. And I remember he opened that Kentucky game with a super long run back on the opening kickoff. So, that's still a pretty vivid memory of mine. And he was a pretty explosive player when he was here. He just, again, happened to play on some not so great teams.
That and unfortunately the off the field issues and stuff too, I
Yeah.
felt like limited his potential. But if you're talking about like pure talent, he's one of the better one receivers Tennessee's had. And I don't know how I if you go look up his highlight tape right now, he has some of the crazier plays that you'll see from Tennessee, like that catch that he got, I think, against Vanderbilt, where he was sandwiched in between those two defenders and lost his helmet and still made the catch. And then I recall him having a couple of good ones in the end zone too. I mean, he was a very dynamic player, and it's just unfortunate that his career couldn't have went in a different direction because he's definitely one of my favorite players growing up too. And man, those Derek Dooley offenses! If only Tennessee had a defense to go
Yeah.
with it.
Especially 2012, man. I just think back to those teams. Like 2011, that team could be better if it's not for injuries. And whatever happened at Kentucky happened at Kentucky. That's not really on injuries, but and then 12, that was by far the most disappointing team that I think Tennessee's had, just because there were real expectations that that team could at least make a little bit of a push that year to win 8-9 games, maybe compete for an SEC East title, but just wasn't able to that season. And then lastly on my list, and I feel like there's a few different linebackers you could mention in this group, but I'm going to go with Jalen Reeves-Maben. I know
Mm.
he's not very forgotten. That when he was on the field, he was terrific here at Tennessee. Again, like we mentioned earlier, did have some injury troubles here. I think really before his time at Tennessee, he was struggling with it, and then after he did as well. But he's one of those guys like Brandon Bolden or there's another Patriots player who was a receiver who made it a career out of being a special teamer, and he's doing that with the Lions right now. JRM is, and that's terrific. But there's honestly several that I could have mentioned in here at linebacker. I mean, you mentioned AJ Johnson earlier. Very unfortunate off-field circumstances there. That honestly, I mean, now that we know more, it really wasn't his fault. It just damaged his career. Kurt Maggitt is another name that
Mm.
comes to mind. That's a guy that I thought was a nice player when he was healthy. Um, but again, just didn't really make it past Tennessee. So there's like linebackers from that period. Tennessee had some nice ones. They just couldn't really make splashes afterward. Um, oh man, another one just came to mind. Darren Kirkland. He had at least one or
Oh,
two really nice seasons,
oh, I
but just
forgot about
never made it
him.
past Tennessee.
Yeah, man, those were some good linebackers at one point. And then Reeves-Maben, man, he was a tackling machine. So was AJ Johnson, one of the best tacklers in Tennessee history. But Jalen Reeves-Maben was a really fun player to watch. And I went to Centennial High School in Franklin, Tennessee. And the year before I got there, which would have been, I think, 2012, he played at Clarksville Northeast. And I heard from some of the upperclassmen that Jalen Reeves-Maben was on the team, but he didn't just play linebacker, he played quarterback, and apparently he ran for 400 yards against Centennial during that
That's
season.
wild.
400 yards. And, during that time, it was around the same time when AJ Johnson was there. Tennessee had the beast package with him where AJ Johnson had like 6 rushing touchdowns. He had more rushing touchdowns on the team than any of our running backs, for being a linebacker in goal line position. And I always wondered why Tennessee didn't try to do the same thing with Jalen Reeves-Maben after AJ Johnson's gone. I'm like, here we go, a high school quarterback that could run for days, like leader of your defense. Why not just put him in?
Well, now that you mention it, like the Lions have done it with him on fake punts. Like I know they did it at least once against the Chiefs a couple years back.
I actually didn't see that, but
That was a Thursday night football game, I think.
see, he's got that athleticism and stuff. I feel like it would have been cool to see him get utilized on offense at Tennessee, because that was one of my favorite things from my childhood. I was talking about NCAA earlier when that whole AJ Johnson thing was going down. His first rushing touchdown, you know exactly what I did. I got right on the NCAA. I made him play both ways, and then I played a dynasty where he was our starting running back and our starting linebacker.
Yeah, I mean Tennessee had decent running backs on that team. I guess Marlon Lane
Marlon
was kind of
Lane.
up and down. Rajon Neal, very underrated running back here at Tennessee. Again, just did not have the support on defense that he needed, but a good running back overall, but just did not have as many rush touchdowns as AJ Johnson. And we've seen teams do this in the SEC in the past. I want to say, was it Auburn that moved Cam Petway over from tight end and paired him with Kerryon Johnson in the backfield in like 2016? Like honestly, that's such a fun idea. Like, can you imagine if Tennessee? Well, I don't really know if Tennessee has that big of a linebacker right now, but like if you had just stuck Arion Carter in the backfield, just made him run wildcat on offense, wouldn't that be so fun?
It would be so much fun, and you're just bringing back memories to me now because I'm thinking about the old Baylor team, man. Like when I think his name is Laquan McGowan
Four
when he
hundred
was
pound
there.
Laquan McGowan, yeah,
Yeah, 400-pound tight end out there, and he was actually getting touchdowns and stuff too. I mean, like
yeah,
the most athletic 400-pound man I've ever seen.
yeah,
It's fun when teams do that stuff.
yeah. It's fun to have fun. And Josh Heupel likes to have fun. Don't get me wrong, but he's not tried any of that just yet. Um, Maybe he experiments with Boo Carter this year, but it's not as fun as throwing your linebacker, defensive end in as like a tight end or a, a running back, or even like a fullback on a fullback dive. Like being because UConn did this a couple years ago, where they basically just did the old refrigerator play from the '85 Bears, where they just handed the ball off to the refrigerator and he'd just score all their touchdowns. Because they had a defensive lineman that had like 5 or 6 touchdowns that year in the interior. They tried it against Tennessee, but Tennessee stopped them all every single time they tried to run that package.
And then like Florida last year too, Desmond, I'm forgetting his last
Desmond
name.
Watson.
Desmond Watson. I remember him getting he got a carry last year, right? I don't know if he got more than one, but I remember
I
seeing
think that's right.
a clip of him in the backfield, and like that's just outrageous. That is just outrageous to have someone like him out there in the backfield. But that stuff's fun, man. And then like even with the NFL, like when Penei Sewell is like out there throwing the ball and everything, like oh, it's fun seeing those trick plays. Hopefully Tennessee can have some player like that this year. Maybe we'll put Josh Shell out there on the goal line situation.
Yeah.
Get my hand off.
He may have some tight end experience in his background. You never know. Being a defensive end, I'm just trying to think. Like Princeton Fant was the last real utility piece you had like that. Although he was an offensive guy, so they weren't playing him both ways over the course of a game. But maybe Tennessee tries something like that again in the future. I don't know.
Hey, if Tennessee somehow ends up having a down year this year, that's one way you can make me happy. You can make me happy by just doing an oddball thing. If Tennessee starts losing, start putting defensive players on offense. We'll just make it a spectacle.
Yeah, that'd be really fun. You just enjoy the suffering while you can, I guess, is the
Yeah.
best way to put it. But hopefully, there is no suffering to be had this season if you're Tennessee. All right, that's about all I got tonight, Jordan. You got anything else?
I just want to say thank you for everybody tuning in. Of course, make sure to like, subscribe, turn on the notifications. We appreciate all of your interactions, whether or not it's on Twitter, whether or not y'all are commenting on videos. We appreciate it a lot, and we're really trying to get things grown here. And the more that this grows, the more that we'll be able to do, and the more that we'll be able to give back to you. So we're very appreciative of everything that you guys do and tuning in each and every week.
All right, well, that will do it for us this week. For Jordan Binkley, I am Tucker Harlan. Again, we appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. We will be back the same time next week. We'll see you guys then.